Welcome to Crime Podcastle Unsolved Mystery Series, episode 46. We're diving deep into a case that's both fascinating and chilling today. It's the Bangalore Double Murder from 2017. You guys have sent some really interesting info about this case, and I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, it's a case that really grabs you right from the start. We've got a successful businessman, a trusted associate, a brutal scene, and then this puzzle of potential motives that leaves you wondering just who could have been behind it all.
All right, so let's set the scene. Prakash Jain, a prominent name in Bangalore's real estate world, and his close associate Arun Varma, they're found murdered in Jain's very upscale apartment. That right away raises questions.
Oh, absolutely. And what makes this case even more intriguing, I think, is the crime scene itself. It's full of contradictions. No forced entry, which suggests the victims might have known their attacker, but the apartment's been ransacked. Yet nothing of value seems to be missing.
So it's like a puzzle with some pieces deliberately hidden.
Exactly.
If I were a detective on this case, where would I even begin?
Well, you'd start by trying to understand the victims, Prakash Jain and Arun Varma. Who were they? What were their connections, their dealings, and potentially their enemies? It's about piecing together their stories to see if those stories might illuminate a motive.
Okay, so Prakash Jain, we know he was a big player in that Bangalore real estate market. That market can be pretty competitive, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Especially in 2017, Bangalore's real estate market was booming. Massive infrastructure projects and a rush for land, which meant big money and fierce competition. Investigators would have looked closely at Jane's financial records, recent projects, any disgruntled partners or rivals who might have had a reason to want him out of the picture. They'd be looking for signs of a deal gone sour, a project that created enemies, or perhaps even rumors of unethical practices that could fuel resentment.
So we're talking about a potential motive rooted in classic jealousy and revenge. Someone who felt that Jane had wronged them in the high-stakes game of real estate.
That's a natural starting point, given Jane's prominence. What's interesting, though, is that investigators didn't immediately uncover a clear rival or business enemy with both motive and opportunity. This lack of an obvious suspect just adds to the intrigue.
It's like the killer wanted to make sure that the motive was hidden. So if it wasn't just blatant business rivalry, what else were investigators considering? Did they dig into Jane's personal life at all?
They did. They were looking for any personal disputes or hidden conflicts that might have escalated to violence. Jane's family did mention he had been under a lot of stress in the months leading up to the murders, although they couldn't point to any specific event or person causing that stress.
Stress is definitely a red flag, especially in a case like this. But without a clear source or a target for that stress, it's a tough lead to follow.
What about Arun Varma, the associate? Could he have been the intended target with Jane caught in the crossfire? That's a possibility investigators definitely explored. Arun was Jane's right-hand man, privy to confidential information, maybe even involved in dealings that could have made him a target. Imagine if Arun knew something or possessed information that someone was desperate to keep secret information worth killing for. Suddenly, Jane's death could be seen as a way to ensure Arun's silence permanently.
Okay, now this is getting really interesting. We have a successful businessman, a trusted associate, a brutal crime scene, and a lack of an obvious motive. It's like the setup for a classic mystery novel. Where do we go from here?
Well, the lack of a clear suspect and motive opens the door to some intriguing theories about what might have happened that night in Jane's apartment. Theories that range from a staged robbery to a professional hit, each with its own set of possibilities. Let's explore those, shall we?
Absolutely. This is where I think things could really take an unexpected turn. Let's start with the staged robbery idea. The crime scene was chaotic, but nothing of value was actually stolen. Could the killer have deliberately made the scene look like a robbery gone wrong to mislead the investigators?
It's a classic misdirection tactic, and it's certainly possible in this case. The ransacking could have been a way to create confusion and draw attention away from a more personal or targeted motive. The question then becomes, what was the real motive the killer was trying to hide?
It makes you wonder if the killer knew something about police procedures or had watched enough crime dramas to think they could pull this kind of deception off. What kind of motive would be strong enough to warrant this level of planning?
Well, imagine someone with a deep-seated grudge against Jane or even Arun, a grudge that goes beyond a simple business deal. Perhaps a past betrayal, a long-held secret that could ruin reputations or even lead to legal trouble. The staged robbery could be a way to mask a very personal act of revenge, making it look like a random act of violence rather than a targeted attack.
That adds a whole new layer of complexity and sinister calculation to this case. It's not just about money or power anymore. It's about something much more personal and potentially dangerous. But let's not forget about Arun. You mentioned he might have been the primary target. What leads investigators to think that?
Arun's position as Jane's close associate made him privy to a lot of sensitive information. He was involved in deals negotiations and potentially even some of the darker underbelly of the real estate world. Could he have stumbled onto something that made him a liability, something someone was willing to kill to protect?
It's chilling to think that Arun might have been caught in a dangerous game he didn't fully understand. This case just keeps getting more complex. We have a successful businessman potentially hiding secrets, a close associate who might have known too much, a meticulously staged crime scene, and no clear motive. What other theories are investigators considering?
Well, there's the possibility of an inside job. Could it be someone close to the victims, someone who knew their routine, someone they trusted enough to let into their lives and ultimately their deaths?
An inside job would certainly explain the lack of forced entry. But who would have had a motive strong enough to kill both Jain and Varma? And why go through the elaborate charade of a robbery?
That's precisely the puzzle that investigators were facing. The lack of obvious suspects within their inner circle, coupled with that staged robbery, made it incredibly difficult to pinpoint a specific individual with both motive and opportunity. It's this very ambiguity that fuels the next theory, a professional hit.
A professional hit.
Yeah.
That definitely raises the stakes. Tell me more about why investigators might entertain this possibility.
Well, consider the precision of the murders, the apparent lack of evidence left behind, and the calculated nature of the crime. This doesn't feel like a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment decision. It suggests a level of organization resources, and most importantly, a motive that goes beyond a personal grudge or a simple robbery. It suggests a motive tied to something bigger, something with far-reaching consequences.
A professional hit would certainly imply that there's more to this story than meets the eye. That Jain and Varma were entangled in something much deeper and more dangerous than just a few real estate deals. It opens up a whole new line of questions. Who would have ordered such a hit? What secrets or threats were powerful enough to justify such extreme measures?
Exactly. And those are the questions we'll start to untangle in the next part of our deep dive. Stay with us as we delve deeper into the investigative challenges, the lingering questions, and the enduring mystery of the Bangalore Double Murder.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Bangalore Double Murder. I think as we continue to explore this complex case, it's important to remember that this isn't just about analyzing evidence and theories.
Right.
It's about two people whose lives were tragically cut short and the families that are left behind grappling with unimaginable loss.
You're absolutely right. We can't lose sight of the human cost of this crime. The families of Prakash Jain and Arun Varma were left with so many unanswered questions, so much grief, and no real sense of closure.
Right.
Imagine the pain of losing a loved one in such a brutal manner and then having the investigation hit a dead end.
Yeah.
It's a wound that may never fully heal.
It makes you think about the ripple effects of a case like this. What happens when a double murder goes unsolved? What is the lasting impact not just on the families directly involved, but on the community as a whole?
Well, there's often a lingering sense of unease, a fear that something so horrific could happen without explanation, without justice being served.
Right.
It can shake a community's sense of safety and make people question who they can trust. In Bangalore, a city known for its rapid growth and entrepreneurial spirit, this case served as a stark reminder that even in the midst of prosperity, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface.
It's like a crack in the facade of a seemingly perfect picture.
Yeah.
And in this case, there are still so many unanswered questions. Why were Prakash Jain and Arun Varma murdered? Was it driven by a business rivalry, a personal vendetta, or something else entirely? What secrets were they hiding?
Those are the questions that continue to fascinate people who follow this case, and they're the questions we're trying to unravel together. While we may never have all the answers, it's important to revisit the facts, the theories, and the lingering doubts to see if we can shed some light on what might have happened that night.
So let's go back to the motive. We've talked about several possibilities: business rivalries, personal disputes, a staged robbery, even a professional hit. Is there a theory that seems more plausible than others, given what we know so far?
Well, that's the challenge with this case.
Yeah.
Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses, and there are unanswered questions surrounding each one. Let's take the business rivalry angle, for instance. While investigators didn't find a clear-cut enemy or rival with a concrete motive, could there have been a hidden conflict, a deal gone sour, or a competitor nursing a secret grudge against Jain?
It's certainly possible. We know that Jain was a major player in the Bangalore real estate market, And that world, especially during a boom period, can be incredibly cutthroat.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine being outbid on a lucrative project, losing a major contract, or even just feeling overshadowed by Jane's success.
Right.
Those kinds of situations can breed resentment and a desire for revenge.
Exactly. And we can't underestimate the role of ego and pride in those high-stakes business dealings. Perhaps there was someone who felt deeply wronged by Jane, even if it wasn't something as obvious as a financial loss.
Right.
Maybe it was a perceived insult, a broken promise, or a sense that Jane had used his influence unfairly.
Makes you think about the pressures and temptations that come with that level of success.
Hmm.
Did Jane make enemies he wasn't even aware of? Did he underestimate the lengths someone might go to in order to protect their own interests or get ahead in that competitive environment?
Those are excellent questions, and they highlight another aspect of this case that's worth considering: the role of secrets. Every individual, every family, every business has its share of secrets, and sometimes those secrets can be dangerous. What secrets were Prakash Jain and Arun Varma keeping? Could those secrets have been the motive behind their murders?
It's like that saying, secrets have a way of coming out. Maybe Jane and Varma thought they could keep those secrets buried, but someone else knew the truth,
Right.
and maybe that knowledge was enough to make them a target.
And remember, we're talking about the world of real estate where information is power. Knowledge of zoning changes, development plans, or even just rumors about upcoming projects can be extremely valuable.
Oh, absolutely.
Perhaps Jane and Varma were privy to information that someone else desperately wanted, information they weren't willing to share.
That brings us back to Arun Varma.
Yeah.
What do you think about his role in all of this? Was he just an unfortunate victim of circumstance caught in the crossfire of someone else's vendetta against Jane? Or was he more directly involved in whatever led to their deaths?
It's a question that's difficult to answer definitively.
Yeah.
On the one hand, Arun was Jane's trusted associate, which suggests he was loyal and unlikely to betray his boss. But on the other hand, that same level of trust meant he had access to a lot of sensitive information.
Right.
He was involved in deals negotiations and potentially even some of the shadier aspects of the business.
Yeah.
Could he have become a liability somehow?
It's like a classic dilemma. The closer you are to someone, the more you know about them, the more you potentially become entangled in their secrets, their risks, and their enemies.
Exactly.
Could Arun have unknowingly stepped into a danger zone simply by being Jane's right-hand man?
That's certainly a possibility. Or perhaps Arun, despite his loyalty, stumbled onto something that made him a threat to someone else, someone outside of Jane's immediate circle. Maybe he witnessed something he shouldn't have overheard, a conversation, or discovered a document that exposed a scheme or a secret that someone was desperate to protect.
It's almost as if the more we delve into this case, the more layers of complexity we uncover.
Right.
Each new piece of information, each new theory raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, only to find more onion underneath.
That's the nature of a truly compelling mystery. It's not about finding easy answers or clear-cut solutions. It's about embracing the ambiguity, the uncertainty, and the possibility that the truth may be more complex and more disturbing than we initially imagined.
And I think that's what makes this case so fascinating. It challenges us to think critically, to consider multiple perspectives, and to acknowledge that sometimes the truth might be more elusive than we'd like to believe.
And it reminds us that even in a world of rapid technological advancements, forensic science, and sophisticated investigative techniques, there are still mysteries that defy easy explanation.
Absolutely.
Cases like the Bangalore Double Murder remind us that there are limits to what we can know, and sometimes the most compelling questions are the ones that remain unanswered.
Well, that's a thought-provoking way to end this part of our deep dive. We've explored the potential motives, the complexities of the relationships, and the challenges investigators faced in trying to piece together this puzzle. But our exploration isn't over yet. In Part 3, we'll delve into some of the specific investigative challenges, the lingering questions that continue to haunt this case, and the lasting impact it's had on those involved. Stay with us. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Bangalore Double Murder. In the previous parts, we talked about the victims Prakash Jain and Arun Varma, that strange crime scene, and the many possible motives. Now let's shift our focus to the investigation itself. What were some of the challenges the investigators faced trying to crack this case?
One of the biggest hurdles, and this might surprise you, was the lack of conclusive forensic evidence. You might think that in a modern city like Bangalore, a crime scene like this would be teeming with clues. But despite thorough forensic analysis, investigators couldn't find any fingerprints or DNA that definitively linked a suspect to the scene. And there was no CCTV footage in the apartment building, which is unusual for an upscale residence like that.
It's almost as if the killer was a ghost, leaving no trace of their presence. Makes you wonder if they were incredibly careful, maybe even had some knowledge of forensics or counter-surveillance techniques. Could this point to a professional, someone who knew how to cover their tracks?
It's certainly a possibility. And remember, we're talking about Bangalore in 2017. While India's major cities had seen significant advancements in surveillance technology, there were still gaps in coverage, especially in residential areas. Some experts even speculated that the killer might have deliberately chosen that location knowing about potential blind spots or weaknesses in the city's surveillance network.
That's a chilling thought. Suggests a level of premeditation and awareness that goes beyond a simple crime of passion. But if it wasn't a random act and the killer was so careful, why stage the robbery at all? Seems like an unnecessary risk, adding another layer of complexity to an already carefully planned crime.
That's a great question, and one that investigators grappled with. It could be that the staged robbery was a deliberate attempt to mislead the police, to make them focus on a simple burglary gone wrong while the real motive remained hidden. Or perhaps the killer wanted to send a message to create a sense of chaos and fear that went beyond the immediate victims.
It's like they wanted to control the narrative, create their own version of events, and make it difficult for investigators to see through the deception. But beyond the forensic challenges in the staged robbery, what other obstacles did the investigation face?
Well, despite extensive interviews and background checks, investigators couldn't find any clear conflicts or threats in either Jain or Varma's personal or professional lives. Their friends and family described them as hardworking, well-respected individuals. No one seemed to have a reason to want them dead, at least not openly.
It's almost as if they led double lives with a hidden side that only the killer knew about, like something out of a psychological thriller. But if the people closest to them didn't know about any enemies or threats, how did investigators even begin to narrow down the suspect pool?
They had to dig deeper, looking beyond the surface into financial records, business dealings, and even rumors and whispers within the real estate community. They were looking for any hint of a hidden conflict, a secret deal, a betrayal, or a motive that was masked by a seemingly perfect facade.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing and the ones you do have don't seem to fit together. So after all this time, do you think this case will ever be solved?
It's hard to say for sure. Cold cases can sometimes be reopened when new evidence emerges or when witnesses come forward with information they were previously afraid to share. Technology is also playing an increasing role in solving cold cases. DNA analysis techniques are constantly improving, and digital forensics might be able to uncover clues from old devices or online accounts.
So there's still hope, however slim, that someday the truth about the Bangalore double murder will come to light. But even if it remains unsolved, I think this case serves as a powerful reminder of the complexities of human nature, the secrets we keep, and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even in a world that's increasingly interconnected and transparent, there are still mysteries that defy easy explanation. The Bangalore Double Murder is a testament to the enduring power of secrets, the allure of the unknown, and the human need to make sense of the senseless.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Bangalore Double Murder. We've explored the facts, examined the theories, and considered the wider implications of this chilling case. While we may never know the full truth, hopefully this deep dive has given you some new insights and perspectives to consider. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast for more explorations into the mysteries that shape our world.